Hi everyone, it's Emma, first year medical student, and since I'm on break between semesters 1 and 2, I thought since I've developed a little bit of a system on how I take notes and then how I study from them, I would share that with all of you. So I think I'm going to divide these videos into two parts. So you're watching part 1, which will be all about how I actually take notes in lecture, how I use my iPad to take notes and what I use it for. And then part 2 will be how I consolidate those notes and use them to review and to study from. So, watch part 1 to get a basis on how I create the notes, and then jump forward to part 2 to learn how I study, and keep an eye out for both the videos. The system may change and I'll keep you updated as it changes, but this video was requested by a few people. Thank you for requesting it. Yeah, let's just jump into it. So like I said, I use an iPad to take my notes. So for step 1, taking notes in lecture, I use my iPad 9.7. It's the one that came out in 2018, and I have a keyboard case for it, which is actually really handy, as well as the Apple pen or pencil that is compatible. I don't know enough about it, honestly. And the keyboard case I just got from Amazon, and I will link it down below. When I was first taking notes, I didn't use the keyboard case and I just used the pencil, but I was not fast enough and I wasn't taking notes in the way that I wanted to, so I purchased the keyboard case. So if you're someone like me who likes to take more detailed notes, maybe make that investment sooner rather than later. So I'll try to splice in an example so you can kind of see what I mean, but what I do in class is 9 times out of 10 we get the PowerPoint slides beforehand. So I will upload those PowerPoint slides into the iPad and open them on Notability. And then I will also open a blank document on Notability for the first lecture of the week and just title it Week 8 Questions to Ask or Questions for Myself. And I will keep both of those open at the same time, which is something I like about Notability. And during class, I will follow along in the PowerPoint. I'll use the Apple Pencil to make quick notes, circle or highlight any diagrams, things like that, and I will use the keyboard to then flip over and type in that blank document. Now, that blank document has been crucial for me in terms of active learning. So throughout the lecture, I'm sitting and I'm listening, and I'm wondering what sort of questions could they ask me to check that I understand what is happening. Or if a professor or a clinician says, hey, this is a good exam question, I make sure to write it down in that list. And we will come back to that list later when we come to studying. And for that 1 out of 10 times where we don't get the PowerPoint slide ahead of time, having the keyboard case is a dream, because I can just type what the professor's saying to us and read along with the lecture instead of trying to handwrite it all on the iPad, which I honestly am just not that good at. I obviously could get better, and I am getting better, but I didn't want to risk missing information for the sake of skill building writing on an iPad. So the keyboard case has saved me a few times, and it has really helped with developing that ongoing question sheet. So step 2 is summarizing at home, and for that I use the iPad, obviously, that has all my notes on it, and my laptop. And the laptop I have is right here, and it's the 13-inch MacBook Pro, the one with the touch bar. Again, I don't know enough about it, but you don't need a MacBook for this. You don't really need an iPad. Just any sort of tablet that you like to use will work. I don't want to push on people that they need the top tech. You could easily use a pen and paper with the printed out PowerPoint slides to do the same technique that I use in class, and you could easily use a desktop computer even, or any sort of laptop. It doesn't have to be Apple. There's a disclaimer. But anyway, step 2 is when I summarize at home. So I sit down with the iPad on one side and the laptop on another. First step, look back through that question list for each lecture, and I try to answer them. Without looking at any notes, I just try to see how much I can jot down, even if it's just a word that I know relates. And I do that on a scrap piece of paper. Then, as I'm going through the lecture, I will reread the PowerPoint slides and my notes that are on the slides, and I will condense those down into review notes. And as I go through that, I will notice, oh, there's an answer for that question. Let's check how I did and make any corrections that probably need to be made. So this sort of active recall and this active quizzing as I go through the notes really helps consolidate it for me. And also, as I'm writing the review notes on my laptop, so typing things in, I can copy paste directly from the iPad, which is one perk to using products that all talk to each other, and still make sure that there's useful diagrams and things on those notes, but they're a lot more condensed. So I will take slide decks that are about 50 to 60 long, and that can sometimes be 3 to 6 pages of summarized review notes. And those are going to be what we use in the next video to actually learn from, or study from, I should say. You're learning the whole time. So by the end of step 2, you end up with notes that look something like this. They're not too crowded, which is really nice. And it is keywords and key things that I know will trigger other memories, or writing things out in your own words. That's really important. So even if I'm taking something directly from the slides, I will, as much as possible, obviously medical terms exist for a reason, but as much as possible, I will use my own language and rewrite things in my own words, because again, that's forcing you to interact with the material instead of just rote copying. I'll just show us another couple examples. So see, I was able to take the diagrams from lecture and make them a size that I felt was necessary. These are probably even a bit big, but it works. And I do all of this just in Word. You don't need anything fancy to do. Something I want to mention before I summarize is the timeline for this. So obviously I take the notes in lecture, so that happens as it's happening. Consolidating the notes, or sort of summarizing the notes, I should say, ideally would happen that night. So you're looking back at those questions, you know, just a few hours away. Obviously that can't always happen, so I definitely try to get that done before, or very latest during that weekend just after. So the material you're looking at it bare minimum that night, but maximum not a week away. You really want to work on fighting that curve of forgetting. So I'll put in a picture, but you forget very quickly, and the later you wait to review, the harder it is going to be to get back up to that full knowledge concept. So I try to take my notes day of, review, summarize day of, if can be, or the next day, latest 4 days away, which still isn't great, and we're still working on making my own routine better. So that's my timeline. Obviously, you do what works for you, but I do suggest at the very least try to read those notes and self-quiz using that question sheet we created, and try to do that night or the next morning, just to, you know, fight that curve of forgetting. So that's how I take my notes, and how I use my iPad in class, and how it might be a little bit different from what else you see on YouTube. I'm not a fancy note taker. Really, you don't want to see my handwriting on the iPad, but anyways, that's how I take my notes in medical school and how I summarize them. Make sure you subscribe down below so that you can keep out for what? Keep out for what? Oh no! Part 2, which is going to be about how I use those summary notes and how I study from them to, you know, pass exams, hopefully. And if you have any video suggestions or any questions, please make sure you comment below. I love having a chat with you guys, and you know, it's where I get the ideas of what I should make a video on. So I hope that was helpful and gave you an idea of what I do to take my notes, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. One last thought. I do want to emphasize that this is just how I take notes, and I want to let you know, as you'll see in the clips of mine, they don't have to be pretty, they don't have to be gorgeous, they just have to work for me, and they do. At least I hope they do. But everybody studies and everybody takes notes in their own way, so it's all about experimenting and finding out what works for you. I hope you can use this example in part 1 and part 2 together to try to test out this study method, but all in all, it only really matters if it works for you. So keep trying until you find something that does. And as you go through your undergrad or your grad school or med school, you're going to find that different courses need to be studied in different ways. So it's good at whatever stage you're at now to start trying out different methods and always paying attention to what's keeping me interested, what's getting me a good understanding, and what do I feel confident doing, and stick with those methods.